As each of the rod ends was installed, a washer was placed on the screw first for proper alignment. The short rod will connect the drive carburetor to the bell crank. Now we mount the carburetor to the manifold. Notice that the gaskets are already in place. Now we install the short rod to the bell crank. Note the installation of two washers between the rod end and the bell crank to assure proper alignment so there is no binding of the linkage. Next, we install the passenger side front carburetor. It is the carburetor that is connected to the driver's side carburetor with the connecting rod. Note the placement of a washer between the heim and the lever to assure no binding of your throttle linkage. Carb is then mounted to the manifold in the same fashion as the first carburetor was. This brings us to the last pair of carburetors, which are identical. Notice with the last two carburetors in place that they are connected to their companion carburetor with an interconnecting link. The screw on the bottom of the interconnecting link is used to match the throttle position of the front carburetor to the rear carburetor. This will be covered in more detail when we sync the carburetors on the engine. The left and right companion banks are then matched using the center connecting rod. The carburetors come to you pre-adjusted. However, the final syncing must be done on the vehicle with the tool provided with your assembly. The fuel system consists of a dash 6 AN hose connection, an adjustable fuel pressure regulator, two aluminum fuel blocks, a fuel pressure gauge, and a wraparound line which can either be hard stainless or braided stainless steel hose. The fuel block with the fuel pressure regulator installed is mounted on the passenger side of the system. Notice that the smaller washer was on the bottom, the larger washer is on the top. The fuel block on the driver's side is the one with the fuel pressure gauge. Note that the washers are installed in the same manner, the small one on the bottom and the large one on the top. Notice at this time that the fuel block bolts are just installed finger tight until the wraparound is installed. Working from behind, with the fuel block bolts still loose, we install the wraparound line. After the wraparound line is snug, we then tighten the fuel block bolts. After the fuel block bolts are tightened, the wraparound line nuts are tightened. Once that is complete, the system is ready for final inspection and installation on a vehicle. At this point, we're ready to do the installation of a Weber system on a typical V8 engine. Make sure that your gasket surfaces are clean, that your gaskets are installed according to the instructions from the gasket manufacturer. There is nothing different in installing a Weber intake system to a V8 engine. It installs exactly the same way as any other manifold would to your engine. When installing your system, it's easiest to handle it by the fuel blocks. When setting it to the engine, make sure not to dislodge your gaskets. Before starting your bolts, make sure your gaskets are in proper position. Then go ahead and install your bolts. Torque the bolts to the proper torque for your particular engine. Now that your system is installed, the only thing between you and the street is to check the carb sync. Your system was preset at the time it was assembled and will be very close to tune. To do this, the tools required are the carb sync flow meter provided with your system, 2 3/8 end wrenches, and a medium screwdriver. The first step to syncing your carburetors is to remove the 4 center air screens so that the velocity stacks are open to use your syncing tool. The second step is to fire the engine and bring it to an idle. The third step is to measure the airflow in all 4 carburetors and record it on a piece of paper. Fourth step is to sync the left front carburetor to the left rear. On this particular engine, because of the valve cover, we're using an end wrench to perform this. The numbers arrived at when syncing are not important, only that all 4 numbers are identically the same. As you're adjusting, you might notice that rather than the carburetor you are adjusting moving, the carburetor that you were adjusting it to changes. The reason for this is because when the carbs are out of sync, the engine is idling on one of the carburetors. Not necessarily the drive carburetor, but possibly the carburetor you're trying to match to the drive carburetor.